time. So when I was about 10 years old, I was depressed because my mom had recently passed and my sisters kept bullying me and my dad was literally the only person there for me. Fast forward 10 years later, I started dating. Remind you, I never dated anyone before because my past relationships never worked out. So I met this guy and a few months go past and he wanted me to marry him, so happily I said yes. My sisters finally decided to come down and see me, and one of them ended up meeting my husband, and she always looked at him like she had a crush on him, but I just brushed it off. So we were all having a conversation and I see that my sister goes upstairs to put her phone to charge. An hour passes and she finally comes back downstairs because her phone finished charging. She then asked my husband if he can give her his phone number so we can all keep in touch, and he says yes. Fast forward a year later and I noticed that my husband starts acting differently. Like for example, one day he couldn't find his phone, so he ended up buying 2 more phones for work. I asked him about it and he just told me not to worry. But one day I told my husband that I was going to work and I wouldn't be back home until 7. But before I left, I ended up putting a camera up so I could see what happened. Instead of going to work, I ended up going to my neighbor's house, who was also my best friend. 3 or 5 minutes go past and I see a black car pulling up in my driveway, and guess who it is? My sister. My husband lets her into the house, so I checked the camera and I saw that they started doing things. I ran over to confront them, crying and in disbelief. I'm now 23 years old and I don't talk to both of them. He's come back to say that he's sorry and he'll never do it again. But he's now married to my sister and they have 10 kids, and I'm now married with someone else with 1 daughter.
Story time on how I was kidnapped by my insane dad. Okay, so boom. This all began at the time when I was 8 years old. So my teacher was off for whatever reason, so we had a substitute teacher. The substitute teacher ended up being my dad, but I didn't know he was my dad at the time. But I always had a bad feeling when I was by him. One day after class, my dad asked me to stay to talk to him. But because I always had a bad feeling about him, I just made up an excuse and told him that I couldn't stay after class. And even when I gave him that excuse, he told me just give him a second, but again, he was weird, so I got the fuck out of there. Anyways, the next day at school, we had free time, and the whole time he was staring at me. It was actually almost my birthday and I was passing out invitations to my classmates. Well, somehow he got a hold of one of my invitations. My birthday went by and everything was fine until the next day. It was Sunday and my mom was at work and I was babysitting my 2 little sisters. And this is where it gets scary. Like for part 2 on how I was kidnapped by my insane dad. Okay, so boom, like I said, it was Sunday and my mom was at work and I was babysitting my 2 little sisters. When I went to go get my sisters a snack, I heard something. I got scared and I immediately called my mom on our emergency phone. She looked at the cameras and there was nothing there, but I kept on hearing something. So I took my mom's old flip phone and I grabbed my 2 little sisters. I brought them to my room in our secret crawl place and I gave my older little sister the flip phone. I told my little sister to stay there and to not come out until I come back, and that if I didn't come back, to call the police and stay hidden until the police came. I grabbed my bat and went downstairs, and guess who it was? My insane dad. So that's when he told me that he was my dad and that he had proof. So I went with him to get him away from my little sisters, and that's when he threw me into his truck. I texted my sister the signal before he took my phone. Like for part 3 on how I was kidnapped by my insane dad. Okay, so boom, like I said, my dad threw me into his truck. I was able to text my little sister to signal for help before he took my phone. About 20 minutes later, he stopped at a hotel. He again told me that I was his, and that's why he would stare at me so much, because he had to make sure. And then he said he had to make sure that I was his sacrifice, but I didn't understand what he was talking about. He was being very creepy. I ended up staying there with him for 6 days, where he was burning me with cigarettes and he was abusing me every day. But thank God, on the 6th day, the police was finally able to track me down. They were finally able to locate me and find me, and thank God they did, because my dad was actually planning on RIPing me. I ran to my mom, cried, told her I loved her, but I also told her that I did it to keep my sisters safe. Now he's in jail for 10 years, and he can't come within 100 feet of me or my family. My family moved to Florida with my stepdad, and now I'm expecting my little brother. Trust your instincts, guys.
My mom just told me the greatest thing. We were watching WandaVision and we were watching in Spanish for her. We're at that part where Wanda's pregnant. Anyway, the baby starts kicking. And I'm like, ooh, did I kick a lot when I was in your belly? And she goes, yes. Yes. I was like, oh, okay. A lot. You kicked a lot. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the part though. She goes, my mother had 18 children and she swore that you were gonna be a boy. She swore because of how much you were kicking and how much you would move around. You would move so much I couldn't sleep. Mom, you would move so much that you would go on one side, the other side would be flat and one side would be huge, and then you'd move over to the other side. That's how much you would move. I So yeah, you moved a lot. Sorry.
Story time on how my Uber driver tried to kidnap me on my birthday. Okay, y'all, so today's story is my own. And thank you guys for 1 million followers. All right, y'all, let's get into it. Okay, so boom. About 2 years ago in 2019, I lived by myself in my own apartment. At this time, I was at the end of my lease and I was actually moving to another apartment. I had to do everything by myself because I had nobody to help me, so I had to go get a U-Haul truck. This was my first time using Uber because I have my own car. But to get to U-Haul, I had to Uber over there so I could get the truck and then go from apartment to apartment. My first Uber driver bringing me to the U-Haul truck was fine. I had no issues with him and it was pretty normal and fast. So once I was done with the U-Haul truck and I was done moving, I had to return the truck to its location. And then I had to Uber back to my apartment where my car was. Now this second Uber driver, this is where the issue comes in. Y'all, it was literally crazy. My life was at stake. Like for part two on how my Uber driver tried to kidnap me on my birthday. Okay, so boom, like I said, I returned my U-Haul truck and I waited for my Uber driver to come pick me up. When my Uber driver came to pick me up, right from the beginning, I knew something was off about him. Always trust your instincts. He was a little weird and off, but I told myself that it's only a 10-minute drive and it will be over soon. So I sat on the back of the car and I just stayed on my phone. You know, minding my business. And then the guy just started talking to me like, I guess he was trying to have small talk. But the weird thing is, I couldn't understand what he was saying. And I got footage, you guys. Listen to this. Yeah, I didn't know what he was saying, but I just thought he wanted to do small talk. So I just was like, oh, yeah, yeah, oh, ooh, ah. But then all of a sudden, he went off the path of my route. I was like, excuse me, you took the wrong turn. Then he turned back and looked at me and said, I think we're going exactly where we need to be. It gets worse. Like for part three on how my Uber driver tried to kidnap me on my birthday. Okay, so boom, like I said, he went off the path of my route. And I said, excuse me, you made the wrong turn. Then he turned around and looked at me and said, I think we're going exactly where we need to be. I still didn't get it and I looked confused and I was just like, just drop me off at this gas station here. And child, he locked the door. At that moment, my heart sank and I knew exactly what was going on. I was being kidnapped on my birthday. He locked all the doors and put child lock so I wouldn't be able to unlock and leave either. I was under pressure, but I knew I had to think fast and get out of this situation. Y'all, he was driving fast, but thank God he wasn't on a highway, so there was red lights. And I live in Miami, so traffic hour is real. I knew that once he stopped at a red light, that would be my only chance to get the hell out this car. So here we go. We stopped at the red light and I took his head and bashed it into his steering wheel. He didn't see it coming, so I did it pretty easy. Running out of time, like for part four on how my Uber driver tried to kidnap me on my birthday. Okay, so boom, like I said, he stopped at a red light and I took his head and started bashing it into the wheel. He didn't see it coming, so that's why I was able to overpower him at that moment. As I was bashing his head, I knew that his door was the only way I was able to get out because of the child lock. As I bashed his head, I unlocked the door and I literally sling my whole body to the front of the car and I was literally on top of him. Unlocked the door, opened it, and I just jumped out. He held on to one of my legs, so I ended up falling on the floor on the street. But at this point, everyone was looking and someone was coming to my rescue, so he just closed his door and locked it. And as soon as the light turned green, he bolted. I was bruised all over, like my arm, but mostly my knees. I went inside the gas station and I waited for my friend to come pick me up. Y'all, all this on my birthday ruined my whole day. But I say that to say this: be careful. Thank you guys for 1 mil.